Matthew Hassan Kukah is the Bishop of the Roman Catholic Diocese of Sokoto, a capacity in which he has served since 2011. Bishop Kukah is a graduate of philosophy and theology from St. Augustine Major Seminary, Jos, a graduate of the University of Ibadan, and was ordained a Catholic priest in 1976. Bishop Kukah holds a master's degree in peace studies from the University of Bradford, UK, a PhD from the University of London School of Oriental and African Studies. He was also a senior Rhodes Fellow at Oxford University between 2002 and 2003, as well as an Edward Mason Fellow at the Kennedy School of Government, Harvard University. Bishop Kukah has vast years of working experience within the church, in the academia, and as a respected statesman. His duty as a statesman spans several years and administrations in Nigeria with several notable assignments. He is the Pro-Chancellor and Chairman of the Governing Council at Nasarawa State University, Kefi. Please join me with a warm applause as we welcome once again to the platform Nigeria Bishop Matthew Hassan Kukah.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Please. The governor of Anambra was already complaining that he's standing for too long. You are already complaining for all this clapping. Let everybody sit down. I know you are ready to sit down already. Honestly, Speaker Dogara, I want to thank you personally. You take the cake. And what you have said literally covers what needs to be said, in part because you had not just the theoretical presentation, but also you spent a bit of time telling the very difficult stories. And I fully support the suggestion, if such technologies are available. If there are drones that can go round and round and find out who has what, because there must be a way of trying to resolve this problem. Pastor Poju, thank you very much. Don't mind what your wife told you. She wasn't, it's not exactly what I told her. She gave you an edited version. But fellow speakers, it's really an honor and a privilege for me to be here. You were saying, okay, and even there was talking about the demand side of economics. But if you come from the part of Nigeria that I come from Kaduna State, and I come from the southern part of Kaduna State. And I don't know what demanding is, because we've been demanding ever since the Kaduna State was created. Okay? We've been demanding from successive governments even a sign of physical presence. Okay? There isn't, across the whole of southern Kaduna, not a single sign of federal presence. So I hear you about demand, but you know, my friend, the Bishop of Nsukka, with whom we share a lot, Bishop Ona, he told me a story about the common story in the bush, that the animals gathered. I don't know whether it was an elephant that died, and they gathered to shear the elephant. And the tortoise from somewhere said, I must get the thigh of this elephant. And they looked at him, and the lion said, please excuse, who made that demand? And they said, it is tortoise. He said, tortoise, you are asking for the thigh of... If you get the entrails, that's what we're going to give you. The entrails, that's what we're going to give you. So tortoise said, actually, that's what I wanted. But if I didn't ask for the thigh, I would not even get the entrails. Some of us have, Labour started asking for the thigh. By asking for... my friends in Labour asked for the thigh. They asked for 1 million naira minimum wage. And the president has already committed himself to solving the problem. And he, as he said in his speech today, has come from a background of labor. And I think with himself and people like Adams Oshimole and a few labor activists, our problems should be on the way to being solved. But let me read out a quotation which will surprise you. It's a text. It says, "It is true that there is worldwide economic recession. However, in the case of Nigeria, its impact was aggravated by mismanagement. The situation could have been avoided if the legislators were alive to their constitutional responsibilities. The legislators were preoccupied with determining their salary scales, fringe benefits, and unnecessary foreign travels. As a result, our inability to cultivate the financial discipline and prudent management of our economy, we have come to depend largely on internal and external borrowing to execute government projects. The corrupt, inept, and insensitive leadership in the last years have been a source of immorality and impropriety in our society. We shall do our best to settle genuine payment of salaries to which government is committed, including the backlog of workers' salaries. Please, I will give $1 million, which I don't have, but I will give you. If anybody can tell me who said this, let me not, the clock is ticking. But this is taken from a speech delivered by General Buhari on the 31st of December, 1983, 41 years ago. I'm not disappointed that you don't remember, because Nigerians don't remember anything. And that is why this is why we are where we are today. We don't remember anything. We don't remember anything. We are celebrating the fact that we've had 25 years of quote-unquote uninterrupted democracy. And we are anxious about the things we've not done. And we're also anxious about why we've not succeeded. The American elections are coming up in November. And there's a lot of anxiety, perhaps even more than there is in Nigeria. And yet, it is exactly 245 years since America elected their first president in 1789. It is to make the point that democracy is not an event. Democracy, the way we understand it, there's a lot of anxiety across the board, and I think all the speakers have said what needs to be said. There's no need, except for me to try and just take you back a little bit, because I prefer to take a fairly historical view, because too many of us are too careless about our expectations. And it's legitimate to have expectations, but those expectations must be founded on reality. Professor Huntington, the famous American professor, was actually my teacher. He did say something, that there were three waves of democracy. Democracy in the 19th century, which is the wave that took America and other countries, and then the post-World War II wave, which took most of the countries in Europe, and then, of course, the third wave happened in 1970, that saw Africa, Asia, and Latin America becoming democratic, or at least embracing the principles of democracy. But as you see, across Africa, democracy has been manifested in different shapes and in different forms. And like Speaker Dogara said, Churchill's statement, the worst form of government except for others. But I think what is missing in our conversation is that unlike Europe, where the principles of democracy were founded on the thinking of several philosophers, from Plato, Aristotle, Socrates, Hegel, John Locke, the whole lot. Our democracy has paid very little attention It's not been the subject of a very serious intellectual. We've been involved in intellectual conversations about democracy. But modern Western liberal democracy, as we understand it today, benefited extensively from the work of people like St. Augustine and St. Thomas Aquinas. It is also quite significant that Joe Biden, even in his presidential address, had to quote St. Augustine. And it means, therefore, that it is the teachings and the philosophies and the theology of some of these scholars that laid the foundation for what we call democracy today. Unfortunately, our democracy is in recession, is in decline, precisely because it is evident to us that what we are working with is not something that has come from our own historical, cultural, or even anthropological experiences. But having said that, even after embracing democracy, it must be clear to us that there are different ways of talking about democracy. There are different models of democracy. The British left us with the Westminster parliamentary system. We quarreled with it, and then we decided we wanted the American presidential system. Of course, I was secretary of the Political Reform Conference in 2005, when the discussion went on about term limits. And there was so much anxiety, almost like there are the kind of anxieties that Nigerians have. You know, we have Nigerians can't think beyond a particular period. Right now, our obsession with politics is 2027. That's where, if you tell Nigerians about what might happen in 2040 or in 2050, Nigerians don't want to hear that. So all our plotting, all our scheming is what is going to happen in 2027. I read a book early in the year, which I think if you can find it, please read it. The title of the book is The 100-Year Marathon. Now, the subtitle is China's Secret Plan to Rule the World. And it's a fascinating book because it talks about the fact that after the Communist Party won elections in 1949, the Chinese now decided to put a plan in motion in which the plan is 100 years old, from 1949 to 2049. And China's plan within that period of time is to be the greatest nation in the world. I don't have to tell you where China is now. It was very interesting. I flew Air Peace yesterday, and it was very nice to see a Chinese air hostess speaking very, 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 very good Nigerian English. But it tells you that if we are going to go on the path of democracy, there needs to be some kind of clarity about really what are we looking at. Now, while we were debating term limits, for example, I remember that time Tony Blair was prime minister. If you remember, he was prime minister for 10 years. Margaret Thatcher was prime minister for 11 years. Lee Kuan Yew, people speak eloquently about Singapore. But Lee Kuan Yew became president, I think, in 1968 or 69 or thereabout, a prime minister. And he remained so consistently. He conducted elections and won elections. The party he founded, People's Action Party, is still the party that is in power today. Party is still in power. Now, what people don't remember about Lee Kuan Yew, and everybody, and the speaker made mention of that country, but it also speaks to other issues, because Lee Kuan Yew studied in Cambridge and got a first class. His son, who just stepped down now as prime minister, went to Cambridge, he got a first class. Lee Kuan Yew's wife went with him to Cambridge. She also got a first class. So the quality of his imagination, and immediately he became prime minister, the first thing he did was to go to Harvard, where young people like Kissinger were just young lecturers. He established a relationship with them. And from there, they led him to Washington. But one of the critical things that Lee Kuan Yew did, which I think should speak to the reason why democracy is failing so badly in Africa and across, I speak of Africa, is that Lee Kuan Yew identified the public service as the most important vehicle of governance. And so if you got a first class in Singapore, you went to the public service. If you did very well, you went to the public service. And he so incentivized civil service that it became the place to go to. So their salaries of civil servants in Singapore was 80% more than what people were getting in the private sector. Now in Nigeria, if somebody wants to marry your daughter and your daughter tells you, the guy I want to marry is working in the ministry. I'm sure you can know that is a no-brainer. It's most likely your prospective father-in-law will look the other way. So it is not so much, and those of you, I'm sure, I always like to call you Dr. Fashola. I think you eminently deserve more than that. They will speak to some of those people, those people who have had the experience and the exposure. That is not so much the kind of thing that government wants to do. Every governor, every president is full of good intentions. The question is, what is the quality of the container, the quality of the conveyor belt for carrying the good wishes of government? And because we have a thoroughly corrupt civil service, the result is that no matter the vision, no matter the dream, because we tend to focus on what president is not doing, what governor is not doing, we are forgetting the quality of those who are conveying the intentions of government. So it's to make the point that when somebody like Lee Kuan Yew stayed for that, he conducted elections. He won elections over a 30-year period. Putin is over 20 years president. We don't know when he's going to go. Museveni, we are celebrating 25 years. Museveni has been in power for about 38 years now. He started in 1986. We have no idea when he's going to go. Nigerians are quite shameless, especially the Nigerian elite. I don't know what Nigerians were thinking when they started visiting South Africa for holidays. And they still go to South Africa for holidays. And they probably have houses in South Africa. But which South Africa are you adoring? Is it the one that was built by apartheid or the South Africa of today? Nigerians are heading to, the criminals have so much money. They will go to anywhere they hear there is a good place. Nigerians are now shamelessly going to Rwanda. And they come back telling stories about Rwanda. But which Rwanda do you want to be in? Is it the Rwanda in which you can contest elections here in Nigeria, you can fight, you can go to the Supreme Court? Tell me who has stood in front of Paul Kagame and is still standing to talk. So we need to make a point about what exactly do we want. Paul Biya has been president of Cameroon since 1982. Mbasogo has been president for 43 years now, he's still president. Sassou Nguesso is still there since 1979. He's been in power for 38 years. I'm therefore making the point, and I think somebody made the point, that there's a correlation between a certain kind of stability and development. It depends though. But the volatility in our system suggests that we need to be a little bit more calm. And I think, again, the speaker before me made that point very well. So the situation in which we are all quarreling with the quality of the tools that we are working with doesn't address the issue. Professor Soludo is here. He's been governor of Central Bank, now governor. Fortunately, there are no governors in the Catholic Church. Otherwise, maybe from here you will be. But he has enough experience and he's going to address some of the issues that need to be addressed. But Martin Wolf, who was, he worked with the Financial Times, he's written a very beautiful book, The Crisis Around Liberal Democracy. Liberal capitalism. And he makes the point that the beauty about economy is that it's a marketplace. And a marketplace is beautiful because it's a place of choice. But the truth of the matter is that when Adam Smith made the point about the invisible hand of the market, well, only spirits are invisible. But it also speaks to the fact that the market cannot be, the invisible hand cannot regulate, the market. Please, do you have the video? Can you play that video of Mr. Gecko? Please, just listen a minute to this video. Just listen, just 1 minute.
I am a liberator of them. The point is, ladies and gentlemen, that greed, for lack of a better word, is good. Greed is right. Greed works. Greed clarifies, cuts through, and captures the essence of the evolutionary spirit. Greed in all of its forms. Greed for life, for money, for love, knowledge, has marked the upward surge of mankind, and greed, you mark my words, will not only save Teldar paper, but that other malfunctioning corporation called the USA. Thank you very much.
I love this video. It's a film called Wall Street. And it speaks about what happens? Because the collapse of the world economy in 2008, it has left very interesting dimension. But one of the very interesting things is that Wall Street, which is really the temple of the world economy of the world, is that after this collapse of the world economy, hundreds, millions of Americans became, homeless. Its impact reverberated across the world. But the very interesting thing is that nobody, not one single person from Wall Street is in prison. Now, Michael Douglas there talks about the glory of greed. And the issue that the speaker spoke about, the challenge for many countries in Africa, beginning with Nigeria, is how do you restrain the greed of the political elite? Not only the political elite, but the greed and the appetite of ordinary Nigerians. Because it is feeding this beast that has made it impossible for this country to grow. And of course, when people talk about labor asking for 60,000 naira, the government says it's unable to pay. Well, economists talk about what they call incentive compatibility. We cannot talk about people being corrupt when it is clear to us that the incentives for doing the right thing doesn't exist. Now, the conflict around the discussion of what economic choices to make. Are we to be socialists? Are we to be capitalists? Nigeria is neither, and it's not a choice of either or. And China has demonstrated very clearly to us that we don't have to make those kind of choices. There's the story of a woman came back from the market and she had a set of twins. She came back with a small cake. When she brought out the cake, the children had a monkey. And the mother was about to give the cake to the twins. And the monkey said, look, you are a mother. You cannot give this, you are going to create problems for your children. How will they share this cake? I'm a neutral person, so let me share the cake. The monkey collects the cake, breaks the cake into two, and discovers this one is bigger than this. So he bites because they are twins. He bites it off in order to equalize it. And in biting it, this one became bigger than this. And he bit this. And then the children are waiting for the cake. And they are looking at, and the monkey goes. And by the time the monkey turns around, the cake is finished. It's that what we have before is not so much, socialism has not worked for us. But it doesn't mean that capitalism will work for us. It means that there has to be something internal in the heart. It's very interesting. We don't like to talk about religion. And like people say that, the religion has become, they've abused everybody. There's no amount of abuse they've not heaped on religion. But the point, he said, it is religion that stops the poor from killing the rich. And therefore, you must actually also help us. Yes, it's religion. What we are talking about, debating about wages now, it is very interesting that Pope Pius XIII, in 1891, let me read out what the Pope was saying at that time. He says, today, working men all over the world are allowed in their demands that they shall in no circumstance be subjected to arbitrary treatment, as though devoid of intelligence and freedom. Working men insist on being treated as human beings with a share in every sector of human society, in the socio-economic sphere, in government, and in the realm of learning and culture. In 1963, Pope Paul VI came out with an encyclical called Pacem in Terris, Peace on Earth. And one of the things he said, which was very interesting, he said, look, quote, it is only by labor of working men that states grow rich. Justice, therefore, demands that the interests of the working classes should be carefully watched over by the administration, so that they who contribute so largely to the advantage of the community may themselves share in the benefits which they create. Nigerians talk about monkey they walk, baboon they chop. The challenge before us is not so much a question of how the market works. The challenge is that the human person in Nigeria must become the thermometer for gauging whether systems are working or not working. And you know, we have provisions in the Nigerian constitution. And I think that the challenge before us, the National Assembly and the government, is to go back to some of, I hear the criticisms against the constitution, but there is enough in our constitution to give us the things we are asking for. If you just go through chapter 2 of the constitution, of course, the frame has said that the issues we are asking for there are not justifiable. But they are fundamental as to how Nigeria is going to grow. There are provisions, for example, encouraging us to intermarry, encouraging us to form association, encouraging us to about religious freedom. But a lot of these issues are operated by their breaches. So, for example, when you look at the United States of America, when their constitution was made, they didn't anticipate, the constitution was essentially for white men who were rich and with property. But within a 3-year period, by 1865, America realized mistakes had been made. They couldn't have foreseen everything. So the 13th Amendment in 1865 said that there will be no more slavery and nobody should be engaged in forced labor. They tried to make it happen. The 14th Amendment, which followed almost immediately, allowed people now, ordinary America, by just being a citizen of America, common citizenship was established. Were the rights achievable? Maybe not. But a system of inclusion was beginning to develop. The 15th Amendment gave people, including black people, the right to vote. And guess what? All the conversation we're having now about gender and so on and so forth, it didn't start with Nigeria. It's not as if Africans don't like, no. It is that actually, with all these amendments, women still could not vote. Black people could vote in America, but women could not vote, including white women. It was not until the 19th Amendment in 1920 that women were now free to vote. So women have traveled a very long journey. I know you still have a long way to go, but it's important to know how you have come to where you are today. In fact, a writer has said that in reality, American democracy didn't come on stream until 1965. A lot of our women, I hear women say, oh, we want to be like Rwanda. You know, in the Rwandan parliament is full of women. But I say, talk slowly, because the reason why if you need to lose many of your husbands as the men died in the Rwandan genocide for women to be, because that's how it came about, you know, that women are so, and of course it's a tactical matter, it's worked very well, but I think it's important to understand that after over 100 years of these provisions, the emergence of an organization called Black Lives Matter suggests very clearly that all the principles enunciated, whether by constitution or the promises of democracy, have to be earned, and I think that this is the point that Onibinde made very well, by contestation. So Black Lives Matter, despite the promises in 1963, the things that Martin Luther King said in his famous speech, many years later, black people still realize they still have a long way to travel. But what is very interesting in all of this is that we work for so that one generation will be better than this generation. The problem with the Nigerian situation is that we today want to make sure if life is not good for us, then life is not likely to be good at all. So moving forward, and by way of conclusion, is to go back to some of the things that have been articulated here. What does it really mean to be a Nigerian? Irrespective of your economic status. Because I always say these are the things that Chinua Achebe spoke about eloquently, you know, when he spoke about his people. Because he always insisted that Igbos must not allow these people who have money misroad to take over, you know, their communities. Because the question, when you talk about the elite, Nigerians measure elitism by the size of your house or the size of your car. So it doesn't matter whether you are educated or not educated. I was here in Lagos. I had a wedding in Lagos. And the groom was so well dressed. Beautiful dress. So when we now go through the ritual, said, I, Thomas. I mean, we had finished. Say, I, Thomas. The guy said, I, Thomas. You say, I, Thomas. He said, you say, I, Thomas. And I kept going on. I said, repeat after me. He said, I said, repeat after me. It was quite embarrassing because there was a loudspeaker. I didn't know the man was a stark illiterate. But he was marrying this gorgeous woman who must have married him for whatever reasons, love, if it happens. But at least there were things that were obvious. So I think we must redefine what it is to be a Nigerian. But we must also make sure that the elite claim this argument and claim this space. Because I've not seen anywhere where illiterate people have built a civilization. It is important that we understand that democracy has its ideals, but those ideals must be enunciated by intellectuals. And I think there needs to be a much more firmer foundation and finding a place for the moral guardrails that can protect our people. Otherwise, those who dismiss religion forget that even if religion didn't exist, it will be invented. Because there are so many things we cannot explain in life. But in the final analysis, people need to be reminded constantly that this world is going to end. The Catholic Church teaches a principle that it calls the universal destination of goods. That is that everything we have here on earth, and Pope Francis wrote an eloquent encyclical called Laudato Si in 2015 to make the point that everything God created is for a purpose. It's not for the greedy. It's for all his children. And I think we must continue, and I think those of us who are in the religious business, let me put it that way, we have to continue to refine the arguments. We have to continue to hold certain ideals. Because like one of my favorite writers, Obiegbu, what we need is not necessarily empires or emperors. What we need is a clean society where we measure our progress not by the presence of the rich, but by the absence of the poor. And finally, the only way democracy can work is that democracy has to be an instrument of development. And if we use democracy to develop, then we'll be developing democracy. I want to thank you very much because I think my time is up.